The dangers of lead in drinking water is sparking a national debate. After the public health crisis in Flint, Michigan, lawmakers are trying to figure out who is responsible and who should have warned the residents. Our investigative team wanted to know what the lead levels were in our water here in East Texas, and for weeks they have been looking at state data and conducting their own tests. KLTV 7's Julia Janae brings us their findings that got the attention of some city officials.
It's odorless, colorless, and if it wasn't for specialized testing, lead in drinking water could go unnoticed. The CDC says any amount of lead in the bloodstream of a child could cause health problems. That's why the EPA set a limit of 15 parts per billion as an acceptable level to be in drinking water. Periodic testing is required by the state, and the city gathers samples from various homes and sends it to a state-certified lab. We looked at major cities in East Texas: Longview, Tyler, Lufkin, Jacksonville, and Nacogdoches. The state database showed Lufkin, Jacksonville, and Nacogdoches had no samples out of 30 over the state limit. 1 out of 30 in Longview was over the limit, and in Tyler, 5 out of 50 samples were over the state limit.
It takes both the water system and the customer working together to reduce lead and copper levels.
Clayton Nicolardi, environmental compliance engineer for the city of Tyler, says elevated lead levels wouldn't be found at the treatment plant, but on private property.
Typically, lead can come from a lot of household plumbing. It can be found in old fixtures, in older construction houses.
To put it in perspective, the 5 Tyler homes that tested over the state limit of 15 parts per billion for lead were between 18 and 30 parts per billion. Nothing near the levels of 158 to 13,000 parts per billion found in Flint, Michigan. It's often a pipe corrosion issue, something for the homeowners to tackle. But did they even know what their water contained? We went by each of the 5 houses, and those we talked to had no idea their lead levels were elevated. Cities have 30 days to let all of those volunteers know via a health advisory like this or a letter like this with the test results. But after that sampling in September, no letters went out, not even those 5 homes that tested over the state limit.
If we do see an elevated lead level, one that's above 15 parts per billion, and again, that was only, that's 10% of the 50 we took, the 5 locations. We'll go out there and do an interview with the customer.
So are you saying that these 5 people, they have been interviewed by the city?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
And
we're in the process of doing that.
So I understand that you all started talking to some of them today after we put in our request for an interview.
Yes.
The next day, we found crews replacing service line pipes in front of some of those homes we identified, prompting our producer, Cody Lillick, to ask the water department.
If the tests were done back in September, why are the interviews just now being done in February? When we brought the results to the city.
You can go ask Greg.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question that we need to look into, but that I'm not ready to answer right now. I mean, that's something we need to look into.
Now, after that interview, officials told us that Tyler Water Utilities have now given results to all 50 people who volunteered to have their water tested. They also received a reporting violation from the state on February 4th for failing to mail residents their test results. Now, during our investigation, we took our own water samples and had them tested with a state-certified lab. And after our interview, Tyler Water did retest as well. We looked at those houses that made the elevated list and other places around Tyler in older and newer neighborhoods, and our results found that the majority tested between 1 and 3 parts per billion. Now that's well below the state limit of 15 parts per billion. The city's findings and ours also found that of those 5 red flagged homes, only 1 that was built in the 1930s is still at or above the state limit of 15 parts per billion.
Julia, are there any changes the city is now making that some attention has been brought to these elevated levels?
Well, Tyler isn't required by the state to do anything beyond mailing those letters because only 10% of the samples were over the limit. The only time the state requires corrective action is if 90% of the homes are over the limit. But we've been told that they are now investigating the cause of the elevations, and as you saw, even replacing some service line pipes that run from the house to the water main. So likely hoping to bring those numbers down.
Thank you, Julia. We appreciate that. We put together a map of the lead testing results for you in the major East Texas cities. You can look at those results in your area just by going to kltv.com and clicking on the big red box.